Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of videos, and today I've got another interesting game to show you from one of my classical games that I played online. This was again, I think it was interesting in how I played. I think I did play well, but there were two moves that I think totally lost the position for me, and well, I'll let you kind of be a judge of how well I do in this particular game. Very exciting game, did come to a very thrilling conclusion, and hopefully you guys might find it as exciting as I did. Right, so let's start the game. I was playing as black, d4, d5, c4, e5, so I went for an Albin Counter-Gambit. I've been sort of trying to learn up some of the lines in the Albin. I do think it's quite an interesting gambit, certainly a bit of a shock weapon, and for this particular game, in preparation for this one, I looked at his games that he's played, and I've seen that he's got a very poor record against the Albin Counter-Gambit. In fact, he has a couple games where he's actually fallen from the Alaska trap. So, maybe I was hoping that he might fall into that particular trap. Wishful thinking in the classical format, but you never know. You never know. So, d takes e5. This is the move. Just so you're kind of wondering what the whole point of all of this is. I'm actually gambiting a pawn, but I get this very, very annoying pawn on d4, which kind of acts as a wedge in the position. So I'll just show you what I mean. If d4, and this pawn actually acts as a very annoying pawn. It stops the development of his knight to its natural square. I'm going to at some points recapture this pawn and hopefully get a nice position because of this really, really strong d pawn. This c pawn, by the way, by playing e5, it makes this move totally pointless now, as now this pawn is marooned on c4, not really doing a whole lot for the position. But in any case, it's not the there are some good antidotes against the Albin Counter-Gambit. I think there are some nice lines that you can play to diffuse the opening. You just have to be careful not to go into some of the traps. So knight to f3 was played, now hitting the pawn. I've got to defend it. c6, and in the games that I was looking at, my opponent plays two different lines against the Albin Counter-Gambit. He's played bishop to g5, which is okay. I think it kind of gives black relatively easy equality. But the other move that he's played is e3. Let's first have a look at bishop g5 and have a look at some of the lines here. So there's a very nice equalizing line that I was looking at before the game that I think gives black a nice pleasant position, nothing too crazy. Bishop to e7, and after this capture of these pieces, notice I'm now one move away from castling. Knight b to d2, knight to g6, so now just looking to simply regain this pawn on e5. White will do the same, try and get this pawn on d4, and after a couple of exchanges, there's a massive swap off of pieces. The position's pretty equal. I'm actually going to be castling next move. We've both got a bishop, we've both got a knight. It's a relatively pleasant position, I think, for both players. So yeah, as I say, I was hoping that something like this would come up. But the other move that he has played in a lot of his games, which is actually a mistake, is the move e3. And I was hoping I would see this move, as this is just a poor move. Unfortunately, it's very similar to that of the Alaska trap that you might see occur here. So e3 is actually a big mistake in this position, as then after bishop to b4, this is a very common, well-known trap. There you've got this capture. This bishop would love to capture here, but the problem is, if let's say he does bishop here now, you've got a very beautiful way to continue the game. E takes on f2. This king would love to capture this, but he will lose his queen here. So instead, let's say he moves to e2, and you have a beautiful way to continue the game. F takes on g1, promote to a knight, continuing the check, and after the rook captures, let's say, bishop here, you're going to win the queen. So it's a very, very nice way to win games, and there's been many players that have fallen on the black side to the white side to this particular trap. So even though he plays his knight here, so now this knight won't be able to promote over on g1. This is still not a great line for him. So bishop b4. The bishop came here. I took here. Again, he doesn't really benefit his position at all to capture here because you've still got this. He took here instead on e3, and well, the problem for white now is he's given himself these two doubled isolated pawns on e file, so it should be relatively easy for me to recover at least one of the pawns, and then you'll be still left with a weakness with one of the pawns. So the game continued. I'd captured off here, bishop to g4. I can also play queen takes on d2 as well. There's a few captures. He played ace a3, which was not a great move at all, as it allows me to regain the pawn. And now I've got quite a decent position. You'll see here that white has these very ugly hanging pawns. You know, hanging pawns, they can be quite good in some position. In this particular position, they're not particularly great, as they haven't got the weight of white's pieces behind them, so they act as kind of like almost, I guess, almost like statues in white's position. But you know, later in the position, they can become very good if they're given the opportunity, if they've got things behind them to try and push them through. He's also got an isolated pawn on h2 as well, which doesn't bode particularly well if he was to go into the endgame. So if I can try and swap loads of pieces off, hopefully I'll be able to nab one of these pawns later in the position to get a very nice win. In any case, the game continued. Knight to d2, knight to e7. I just wanted to get on with my development. Castle's long, knight to ef5. I've got both my knights onto very nice squares. I'm about to castle next move. He's got to do something about this pawn, so he now moves his e-pawn forward, and that allows me now to jump this knight into e3, now forking both his rook and his bishop. His rook comes to e1. I decided to bank on the bishop pair, took this off, he took back with his e-rook, and now I castle. So as I say, so far so good in this position. It looks pretty nice for me. Played f4 here, and here I put my knights onto d3. This is a very powerful knight. It's controlling most of his position, and it's also checking the king, and his king came to c2. So I didn't really think much of this position. It looks as though, you know, I'm doing absolutely fine. I've got a very nice knights on d3, which is controlling most of his position, and I thought, you know, this should be okay. I'm just going to double my rooks up and enjoy this really nice position. But here's where things went a little bit wrong, and I think, I guess some of the learning things really for me is really, I think, trying to make sure I calculate the line to its full extent, if that makes sense. So, you know, this plan of just moving this up here, moving this here, looks very nice, but what I didn't see is that white has got a very nasty threat here. So I have to put my rook to d7, which is actually a mistake. You may notice that my knight has actually got no available jumps that it can go to. So b4 was played, and in actual fact my knight is trapped here, or as I say, so I thought, as really this knight, although it looks like it's perilous over here, in actual fact it's relatively safe for now. I can just about hold on to the knights, but the position is now got just about equal again. I had a slight advantage, but now white can play a little bit around this knight now. So I put my other rook to d8, knight to b3, and weirdly b6 actually saves the knights. Don't ask me why. It's just this engine line that's been recommended. If now, let's say, the rooks start to pile up on you know, this knight here, so something along the lines of, you know, like rook here, play a move like h6, let's say d1. This is actually a mistake for white, as now I've got this very nasty looking check here, which would then win the rook along here. So white has to be careful of stuff like that. Just also another thing to note as well in this position, something that we brought up in the post analysis. My opponent was really worried about knight captures here. It looks really good because after rook captures you could take here, win a pawn, in actual fact, knight to b1 is really good. So you know, white is going to immediately win back the material and actually have a very powerful rook on b7, so something that I don't particularly want. So going back, b4, rook f to d8, and I played c5. I tried to find a way to hopefully save my knight from this very perilous looking position now. He captured the pawn back, very happy to see. I put my rook to c8, so now double attacking this pawn. He put his rook to f3, and now I jump my knight into c5. So I've regained the material, and my knight is now safe. There's a couple of exchanges, and I've got a very nice position here. This is even better than the position, and it all comes down to the pawn structure here. You'll notice we've got 4 pawn islands for white versus my 2 pawn islands for black. We have 3 isolated pawns. We have 2 hanging pawns here. So really, my whole strategy is just going to revolve around trying to exchange off these pair of rooks in favourable circumstances. And then in the king and pawn ending, this should be an easy win for me. My king will just need to target maybe one of these pawns or try and pick it off somehow. Even if I just exchange one set of rook, which should be enough, my one rook should be able to outmaneuver white's one rook. So let's have a look how the game progressed. So I'll just play a few more moves. We tried to get my king active here now. Rook to d5, very nice move. I really don't want to exchange rooks here, as this will help white's position. So something like this capture here, certainly not a good position. C takes d5. I can capture here, but the problem now for me is white has got these really strong pawns like this. They've created almost like a big broad shield, and white should be able to push through one of these pawns against me. So certainly something that I didn't particularly want in this position. But going back, I put my rook back to c6. a4 was played. I threw in a check. His rook came across. I put my rook back. He swinged his rook over to h5, now hitting my h pawn. I played h6, h3, and rook to e6. I'm just trying to probe for different weaknesses in white's position. In particular here, I want to try and force the push of one of these pawns, as doing so would stop his other rook from getting back to the side of the position of the board, which would help defend his position. So just something, an example of, let's say, pawn here. I can throw in this this check after, let's say, this king comes here. This king is now trapped on this side of the board. Is going to play no more active part in the game, which would have been quite nice. Moreover, let's say the king came over here. I could then maybe try and round up this pawn somehow, or at least win one of the pawns anyway, and have a very advantageous position. Rook to e3, trying to hold on to the pawn. But a6, now I'm stopping the rook from coming to b5 now, and f5 was played. So very happy to see this. So now we've got a closing of this. So white's done the job for me essentially, as this now allows me to throw in a check here. He put his king to c3, which is a bad move, as now it allows me to put my rook onto c6. He has no way to defend this isolated pawn. You can kind of see some of the problems, as I say, with these isolated pawns, is it allows me to round up in some way to try and get them. He tried e5, so he tries to maybe try and create a passer along here. These are looking very menacing, these pawns. They really kind of can save positions, hanging pawns, especially when they start getting up the board. I did capture here, so I'm now up a pawn now, and the king comes to b3. So really, I've got a very nice position here. I've got a nice lead on time. I still had about 16.5 minutes here. My opponent was down to just under 13 minutes. And I spent quite a long time here. I guess I was thinking of trying to find ways in which I could swap off these rooks. Maybe try and win one another isolated pawn potentially. I think my main concern in this position at the moment was just around what happens with these pawns over here. I was a bit worried about ideas such as f6 here, as that would really open up my my king side and could lead to some dangers for me. In any case, I put my rook to f4. I didn't really like the idea of this pawn moving any further forward. And then rook to g3. So he's now hitting my pawn on g7. So the most obvious move here for all of you is probably just putting my king back to f8, help defend the position. Should do absolutely fine. Here I played a bit of a blunder, and I think I overthought this position maybe a little bit. You know, if I go back, interestingly enough, that move, the move rook to f4, I spent a whole 10 minutes, sorry, a whole 8 minutes on this. I'm down to about 8.5 minutes. But the next move that I played, which was rook to c4, I only spent just under a minute thinking about this move. And I think I was quite incensed around this idea of throwing in a barrage of checks against black white king and maybe delivering a mating attack. The problem is it just doesn't work. And the biggest issue of this of all is I just blunder a pawn here. So now I lose this pawn on g7. And it's, well, my position starts to deteriorate. Notice that this key pawn on g7 is holding this h-pawn. So this other rook is going to come steaming in. But, weirdly enough, I can actually still just about hold on to a draw here. After a5, I guess I wanted to try and create a little platform for my rook. e6 was played. And now I could just unleash a barrage of checks on the white king. In actual fact, this position I can end it in a perpetual if I wanted to. But, you know, I wanted to try and go for a win. I wanted to try and find some ways I can win. So I threw in this check here. The other advantage of playing this is now I can move my other rook, allowing me, you know, I can leave this rook here. So c2 was played. I capture this pawn. And basically my plan was just to go and deliver a lawnmower, mates. Was I able to do it? Well, let's have a look. So he threw in this check now. I moved my rook along. He captured this other pawn over here. I threw in this check. King came to b1. My rook came to e2. And a really, really nice move. After a1, he has got a very nice move here. If I try and do this, rook to d1, then save the position. So I thought, well, let me try and kick this rook away somewhere. So it comes back to b2, trying to exchange off rooks. Notice, if I ever capture here, this is terrible for me, as then he's got these connected pass pawns to break through in the position. So here I'm sort of then forced to go for a perpetual here. I play rook to a3 check, king to b1, and essentially I just repeat the position here now. So the game ended in a draw. A bit of a shame. As I say, I had a very nice, very, very promising position. And I guess what potentially, I guess as a learning from here is, I think number one, I think this was certainly the biggest blunder here. The blunder earlier on in the game with, you know, this move over here, you know, with the knight not moving. I guess this was just maybe, you know, taking time to just make sure my position is sure, make sure that you know, I'm doing these blunder checks before I make these moves, because I spent in essence just about 40 seconds on here, which really isn't enough time to really do my blunder checks, make sure I'm not just simply losing a piece. And then if I come forwards to, you know, I keep going for it. As I say, I managed to fight back in the position. I had a very good, promising position. But here, just finding, instead of, you know, quickly playing, which I think I spent, as I say, just under a minute, just spending just a little bit of time just to play king to f8. My position here is absolutely sound. You know, there's nothing that white can really do here. If he tries to push forward with f6, to try and crack open my position, it looks scary. In actual fact, This is absolutely fine. I just capture here. If he ever took this pawn, I just move my other pawn forward. I've now got connected passes here. I just have to get my king to a safe position. Moreover, if he captures the other way, I can then capture with my rook. This pawn's now defended, so position's absolutely fine. I'm up 2 pawns. It should be a winning position here for me. So as I say, I think it's a little bit. It just comes down to that, just that little bit of time, just to blunder check these little things. And I think as a learning from here, I think what I'm going to try and do, certainly up to a point. Obviously, I can't do it if I'm down to like 10 seconds left on the board. But in these classical games, just spending at least maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just doing blunder checks, just doing, is everything defended? Is everything not under attack? And I think that will certainly help me in making my decisions and making sure that I don't lose these quite promising positions, quite good positions that I get myself into. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you soon. Take care.